I'm Nadeem Iqbal from Global Newsline show called Short Circuit. I have invited a very old friend of mine, Dr. Hisham Sarsour, nuclear engineer, and he graduated from NC State long time ago. So, Dr. Hisham, if you can introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, it was a long time ago that we were both students at NC State. My name is Hisham Sarsour. Um, Basically, I graduated, finished high school in Palestine, then moved to the US. And I attended Columbia University for a bachelor in nuclear engineering, then moved to Madison, Wisconsin for a master's and came to North Carolina for a PhD program at NC State. Since that time, I have worked in the industry, both national labs and university and private company. And also, I have been involved in the Muslim communities in New York, Madison, and in Raleigh, North Carolina.
My understanding is that you have been a long-time community member in helping the young generation in education and also mentorship. So I wanted to talk about what is happening today in the world. And our world peace is actually at risk. What is happening for a long, long time. A couple of weeks ago, there was a big conflict between Israel and Iran. So give me some thought about what is going on and why it happened.
We need to go back to the 1970s when the Shah of Iran started a nuclear program. He signed an agreement with Siemens of Germany to build the nuclear reactors in Iran. And interestingly enough, the Israelis at the time, who were advanced in terms of the nuclear program, have offered and helped the Shah of Iran and Iran in the nuclear program. Because Israel looked at itself as an entity that does not really belong in this large, scheme of the Middle East. So they are different. And they thought that they can ally themselves with Iran, being mostly a Shiite country, again, in this scheme of the Middle East. So they thought that to balance Iraq and Egypt and beyond, that the best thing is to ally themselves with the Shah of Iran.
Mhm.
The Germans started building the nuclear reactor, and when the revolution, the Iranian Revolution, happened in 1979, the Germans pulled out of Iran and the project stopped. At one point, the US have given green light for Iran to have a peaceful nuclear program. And as a result, sometime in the 90s, the Russian came and built this Bushahar, which is basically completing the reactor that the Germans have started. There was an agreement during the time of the Obama administration between the US, Iran, Russia, China, and the European countries to really have some control over the Iranian nuclear program. And everyone remember when Netanyahu came to Washington, invited by the Republicans, and despite the fact that the Democrats were behind Obama on this, and he tried to derail it, it did not work. Then came the first Trump administration, and at that point, Trump administration pulled out of that agreement. As a result, Iran have went into a marathon of enrichment, getting to 60%, according to what they declared 2 years ago or so. That shocked the world that they have got into this level in a short period of time. Now, the U.S. in principle, in 2004, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the national security advisor of President Carter, with Gates, who became CIA director later, they had this study to have a new strategy toward Iran. Part of it was to support a nuclear program in Iran for peaceful means. And it states specifically there that their judgment is that the Iranians feel, how did Pakistan get to a point where they have a very active nuclear program and they have long history before anything that, in terms of their empire and so on and so forth, and they feel that they need to have something. The conclusion of this came, as mentioned, about 2 weeks ago, when the U.S. administration gave green light to Netanyahu government to bomb Iran. Now, one point I need to make it clear: in the past 30 years, Netanyahu would go to any new administration in Washington, D.C., and encourage them that they need to bomb Iran, bomb Iran, bomb Iran. And this is on record that all the presidents will say, no, 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 no. Until we have this thing 2 weeks ago, where basically the Israelis came with a plan that
Hmm.
we have enough resources on the ground in Tehran and the surrounding that we can take the top leadership of the military, the top leadership of the nuclear expertise and scientists in Iran in the first night, plus attacking some nuclear facilities.
Yeah, but this happened when the negotiations were actually going on, and they were going to meet over the weekend, and this happened on Friday. So was it planned to do that to to give the impression to the Iranian that we are negotiating, and they caught them unguarded?
Yeah, I think what we need to understand is that when Trump administration came, for the second term, he mentioned explicitly that he wants to have a peaceful agreement with Tehran in terms of the nuclear program to reach into an agreement, and he is not interested in war or in bombing Iran. And he kept talking in public that he's looking for a peaceful resolution to the nuclear program. I mean, he
Hmm.
repeats this frequently, which the Israelis did not like at all. Now, Trump said that the Iranians have 60 days to come to an agreement. And as you mentioned, on Sunday, which is the 3 days after the attack on Tehran, there was supposed to be a meeting in Oman. So the Iranians were under the impression that the negotiation is still ongoing. But in fact, there were signals that were clearly there that there is something that's being cooking against
But
the
but
Iranians.
before that, I heard that there were 200 planes involved in attacking Iran. So those 200 planes must have taken some time, a week or two. So do you think that there were countries around Iran who actually helped Israel to make that happen?
I do not think that the first wave of attacks um, was totally Israelis. I don't think there was any other element. However, the planes are the U.S. planes, the bombs are U.S. bombs, the ammunition, all of these things are U.S. made, no doubt about that. But no, I don't think there was direct involvement. However, we should say also the U.S. gave the impression to Iran that things are okay. We are talking. We're gonna keep meeting in this regard, and that Trump made it public and through other sources that he prevented Netanyahu from bombing Iran. That gave the wrong signal to the Iranians in this regard, and they were caught off guard from that perspective. Now, I just want to mention one point. Witkoff at one point said that we are willing to allow Iran a certain level of enrichment. For a few days, that was the case in the media. The Israelis again got upset. Suddenly, the total shift of the American position to the Israeli position, we will not allow any enrichment. And of course, the Iranians would not have accepted any of this.
So basically, what happened is that they were conned, the Iranian basically, and you think that there was a part of USA also
I think
in
the U.S.
giving this
participated in
impression.
fooling them. There's no doubt. I mean, clearly, as you alluded to, the U.S. participated in fooling the Iranians
Mhm.
and giving the impression that the U.S. is still insisting on a agreement and they want a peaceful resolution to all of this, while at the same time, knowingly, they know that the U.S. The Israelis are preparing for a major attack.
But don't you think so? This is actually making the USA looking bad among the world countries, and nobody want to trust them anymore.
Oh, definitely. I think that you made a very, very important point that I really wanted during the discussion to add to it, but you already have mentioned it. So when the president came after the attacks started, and strong attacks came from Iran against Israel, basically military installations, universities, research center, Weizmann, which is one of the most famous in the Middle East, and so on and so forth. Trump came from Canada interrupted the meeting with the G7. Basically, he did not want to sign agreements with the G7. One was over tariffs, one over Russia and Ukraine, and the third one was about Iran and Israel. He did not want to sign any agreement among the three. But at the end, his advisors convince him at least to sign the Iran-Israeli thing. So he reluctantly signed it. But to make a drama, he said, I am leaving Canada. I'm leaving the conference before its end because there was something big happening. There's something big that will be happening. And then he called immediately after that statement on the people of Tehran, 10 million people to evacuate the city. So he gave the impression that something big, and as you alluded to again, that when he starts saying things in the morning, things in the afternoon, yes, U.S. will do this, U.S. will not do this. Suddenly, the White House issued a statement that after 2 weeks we'll make a decision. Again, that was part of the deception, and that's why you absolutely right. The U.S. really look untrustworthy. They look very bad in front of the whole world. That can you trust? This was not a tweet. We are used to tweets that go left and right. This was an official, White House statement. So definitely the lack of trust down the road in whatever comes for Washington, D.C. will be prominent.
But we have seen the same thing when the USA attacked Iraq. You can also go back and read that how the lies were created about WMD of Iraq, which did not exist. And the USA still is dealing with the world as if nothing has happened. So you think that the same thing will happen and people will forget about it and it will keep, engaging the USA?
I don't think that people have forgot Iraq. After all, they have made cases and they have lied to the whole world. Even the U.S. media, New York Times, have to come clean after what had happened and said we went along with the lies of the U.S. government in this regard. What I think is happening is might is right. The world really had not much of a choice.
So there is no justice, actually. Nobody's
Oh,
talking about
absolutely,
justice.
absolutely, and in fact, I remember in one of the late night, program, basically, where George W. Bush came and was cracking jokes. He was going in the White House and looking, oh, where is the weapons of mass destruction for Iraq? No, no, they're not here. They're not here. They were making jokes after it. There's no doubt that there is a clique in Washington, D.C. that was there, determined to take over Iraq and beyond. In fact,
Yeah.
Wesley, who was the CIA director at one point, he said to the Iranians, we are coming. To the Syrians, we are coming. To the Egyptians, we are coming. This was a public, statement, but public interview that he made. So the new cons, basically, they had a plan to take over. But what had happened really is they had hard time in Iraq and Afghanistan, where basically they lost trillions of dollars. Many soldiers, many of them came basically lost their.
But that reminds me, sorry to cut you in,
Go
but that
ahead.
reminds me of basically destruction of all the major Muslim countries, 6 or 7 already done, and they are moving forward with the plan. The USA is moving forward with the plan that probably was created by newcons, and Iran probably is the last standing alone now among the Muslim nations, and I think it was unexpected that Iran retaliated back so powerfully that Israel is begging for peace. But you think the peace is going to last?
First of all, we are shifting the topic. In my judgment, after the U.S. bombed the 3 nuclear sites, and the president came and he said basically they are not functional, they are totally destroyed. Intelligence so far have said that the damage is minimal, and they only put back the Iranian program for a few months. And this got the White House to go berserk because basically it defied what the president have said. Now, the Israelis definitely, was discussing last week in a public event that this war only would last for a few days because according to the Wall Street Journal, the Israelis were paying hundreds of millions of dollars a day using all those missiles.
$200 million a day. Yes, I
Right,
heard.
right. So basically, they want this thing to stop in this regard. So the Iranians basically convey to the Americans that we have to do something,
So the
and
US.
we need
So
to
you think?
bomb.
Right. So you think U.S. attack was a symbolic instead of actually damaging the Iran, or and also Iran retaliated. It was all very symbolic because no
Yeah,
damage was done.
yeah, I would not call the U.S. attack symbolic because but the Iranian response. I mean, the Iranians have conveyed to the Americans that we have to do something for our own reputation to save
Correct.
face. And if you remember, this is the same case with Soleimani when the Americans killed Qasem Soleimani.
I remember
The,
that. Yes.
right, Trump himself, he said at that time that the Iranians told us that they're gonna bomb Ain al-Assad base in Iraq, so we empty it, and they did, send a few missiles. Same thing in here. I mean, what's really, crazy is for the Iranians to bomb the Aidid in Qatar, and then for the president of Iran to call the Emir of Qatar and said basically, oh, you are brother, we are sisters, we are this, and that. And furthermore, Trump would call the Emir of Qatar, said, can you talk to the Iranians to stop?
Let me move. Let me move forward with
It's
the
a
other topic.
theater. It's a
Right.
theater, really. For 24 hours, you were watching a movie.
Right. So thank you very much for your insight. But the other thing, which is actually the big elephant sitting in the room, nobody is talking about, which is the Palestinian cause. Over 60,000 people have died over there, killed by the illegal war of Israel over a period of more than 2 years. Um, the International Court of Justice and ICC both have indicted Israeli leaders of war crimes, allegedly war crimes. Do you see any possible resolution in near future for the Palestinian resolution or Palestinian solution?
Okay, the damage that happened to Gaza at different levels really is beyond description. You mentioned about 60,000, shaheed. There are about 150 to 200,000 who were injured. There are maybe 20,000 plus who under the rubble. The bulk of the infrastructure, according to the UN, more than 90% of the buildings were destroyed. So the damage is huge. And the international community is just watching and not doing, or even the bulk of them saying anything about it. Now, there's a chance that the US government would come, basically Trump will come to Netanyahu and said, I would need a conclusion to this.
Mhm.
That's a possibility. That's a possibility. Because after what had happened, in the past 2 weeks or so, the dynamics in the Middle East has changed. According to Haaretz, the bulk of the Israelis supported the war on Iran, but the bulk of the Israelis want the war on Gaza to end. Now, Netanyahu wants to stay in office. There's no doubt about it, because if he leaves office, most likely he will end up in jail. So now there is a talk of maybe a new election, since now his numbers went up. I think that if Netanyahu will see himself coming back, he could really work with the US to end up this Gaza. But the main issue will be what's after. Netanyahu have publicly said the war
I
in
don't see
Gaza.
any. Yeah, I don't see any roadmap really, a definite roadmap. And do you think that the American have played a important role in bringing peace, or any constructive role actually bringing peace to that area?
No, definitely not. I mean, the US has been a partner in all the aggression of the Israelis in the area. They have been supporting them at the UN. Diplomatically, they have been, sending tons of weapons, hundreds of tons of weapons recently and over the years. So no, the US is not really, a peace, broker when it comes to the Middle East. They are part of the problem. The main challenge for the Muslim Ummah is that there's not an entity that is willing to come and says something needs to be done and insist on it. I'll just give you a quick example that the Israelis have been bombing Syria day and night for no reason. They say basically down the road, Syria could be a threat to Israel. When Turkey talked about having some troops in Syria, they just went berserk. And Trump had to call Netanyahu to the White House, telling him, listen, Erdogan is my friend. I like him and he like me. All the issue with him need to be resolved peacefully. Even when Turkey tried to have something in Syria, the Israel will put a veto. So imagine if the Muslim countries want to do something, they cannot. All the Muslim countries combined, 57 of them, they cannot get a gallon of milk to Gaza without the Israelis' approval. I mean, that's show you the level of tragedy and humiliation that we are in.
So after all of this insight that you have been talking about, do you think that a still two-state solution is a viable solution? Because history tell me that whenever there is a Muslim state um, running the Palestinian area in Jerusalem, there has always been peace. All the three religion followers live there in peace. And I never heard of in history any major conflict going on between those three followers, including Muslim and Jews and Christian. Actually, Muslim and Christian were very close, and Caliph Umar and also Saladin both brought the Jews back who were expelled from the Palestine and allowed them to live in there in peace. So where this conflict is coming from, is it a European invasion like it happened in USA and also in Australia and other places? Are we looking at the same thing, what is happening now? Because the actual Jews that we are talking about are the Semitic Jews. But what we see in Israel, who is in control, they are basically European Jews. So what is your opinion about the one state solution will be the best solution going back to that and everybody live in peace over there?
First of all, I don't think Judaism have anything to do with Israel or Israel have anything to do with Judaism.
I
This
agree
is
with
a
you.
political, excuse me.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, this is a political endeavor that Europe has a Jewish problem, no doubt about it. And the Muslims, as you alluded to, for 1400 years, they have the Jews living under Muslim Spain, the Abbasid, the Umayyad, and in fact, some of them will tell you our golden era was under the Muslim rule. As you mentioned, in fact, the Jews were not allowed to live in Jerusalem or enter it during the time of the Romans. And Umar al-Khattab insists that they will be allowed to come and access the city. The
Mhm.
two holiest churches in the world, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, where the Christian believe Isa alayhi salam is buried, which we do not, of course, believe that he was not crucified, and the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem, which is his birthplace, were protected and taken care of by the Muslims for all this time. What we see now in Israel,
Hardly anybody knows about this historical fact. So we Muslim actually are short falling on that, telling the
Agree,
world about.
absolutely agree. And the BBS, in fact, have a program on this. Believe it or not, for the last 300 years, the keys for the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is in the hands of the Nseba family, which is a Muslim family. The Christian sects within the church did not agree who should have the key because it was an honor. They kept fighting until there was an agreement. Okay, we'll give it to a Muslim.
Mm.
So for the past 300 years, the Muslims have this thing. So to about the two state solution, I mean, forget it. Just go to Palestine. Go to Palestine. On every hill, on every mountain between the cities, there are so many of those settlements. Now there are 850,000 Jewish settlers who live in the West Bank, including, of course, Jerusalem. And as I said, Europe had the Jewish problem. To solve it, somehow they gave Palestine to the Jews. Now, imagine there are 14 million Palestinians in the world. There are 14 million Jews in the world. The bulk of the Palestinians are outside and they cannot go back to visit. Bulk of them even visit. If you are a US citizen or a Canadian citizen, you can go to visit. So basically, they are not even treating the locals, Muslims and Christians, with the basic rights in that regard. So to think that they will give you a state as a Palestinian, I think this is daydreaming. No, they really want the whole place. And Smotrich and Abdel made it clear. We need to remove the Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank. And they said explicitly, Netanyahu is with us, but he cannot say it publicly.
So the last point that I really want to talk to you about that. Okay, if we have peace between Israel and Iran, and it's okay with the USA, everything is cool. What about Palestinians? Who's talking about them? They're not part of this, any of the truth that is happening. Nobody's talking about them. Where we are going to go from here? Because the reestablishing the population, which is displaced so many times, so many people have been killed. All the institutions, hospital, All the infrastructure has been destroyed. Who's going to rebuild it? Is anybody talking about it? What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, in fact, it's yet another tragedy for the people of Gaza that for the past 2, 3 weeks, not much is being talked about what's going on in Gaza. Almost on daily basis, the people who are seeking food, 100 or so of them are being killed by the IDF. And there is not really any prospect for a short term solution to this. Remember that Netanyahu have said publicly the war on Gaza will end when Trump plan is in place. I mean, that was in a public speech. He said the war on Gaza will end when the Trump plan is in place. What is Trump plan? To get all the people of Gaza to leave Gaza. That's the Trump plan, so that the U.S. can have it and have a Rivera, Middle East Rivera, in this regard. So there are no indication at this point that the Egyptian and the Qataris, who usually work on behalf of the U.S. and talk to Hamas and Islamic Jihad about having some kind of a ceasefire or solution. I do not see anything coming on the short term unless Trump will have one of his moments. You know what I'm talking about, that he will come overnight suddenly and put a tweet and saying, oh, Netanyahu, stop the war. And of course, if he said it, Netanyahu have to abide, because otherwise he will have issues. I mean, you have seen that when the truce was announced by Trump, the Israelis killed a nuclear scientist in Iran. As a
Right.
result, Iran sent a few missiles. As a result, the Israelis sent planes. Trump got over the phone with Netanyahu, said, bring your plane back, bring your planes back. And he was firm with him. Don't finish this part. So I think until and unless Trump come to a conclusion that something needs to be done, because the Muslim Ummah really, all those countries who are surrounding the occupied Palestine, they are really worthless when it comes to the issue of
Mm.
Palestine. On the contrary, we have seen countries like Jordan, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, helping the Israelis with supplies. And this is not something, they were thanked publicly by members of the Knesset.
That
And
that that topic alone, I think, is going to take another hour. So
right. So what
we
I'm
can
saying,
tell
if those countries are helping the Israelis after the Yemenis closed Bab el-Mandeb, the ships are bringing the stuff to Abu Dhabi, and from there the trucks move through Saudi and Jordan to Israel. So
correct.
that's what I'm saying. I'm just supporting that. Don't expect much from the Muslim world and specifically the Arab countries. The only statements about who gonna rebuild, the only statement that I saw is from Erdogan saying that the Israelis need to pay for rebuilding Gaza. And of course, the Israelis, they are not just asking eventually the Arabs to pay for it. They said, Smotrich clearly said the day before yesterday, that our attacks on Iran need to be financed by the Gulf countries.
Yeah. So let me close that, Dr. Sarsour. Really, thank you for being with us on Short Circuit with the Global Newsline. I really appreciate your insight into these matters. We're going to come back later on and we're going to talk more about other matters. And also, I would like your opinion about the education state in the USA and other area of the world, and how it produces the people that we have today, which is actually getting away from the justice system and not talking about justice, but my thing, my thing. Everybody's talking about my opinion, about my interest. So we're going to talk about it later on, and we will come back. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would welcome. This is a subject that's close to my heart, especially with those changes that are happening at the universities for the past 2 years, which means there's a new generation that think differently, and the system will try to reverse this. I would welcome a meeting. Thank you very much. Jazakallah
Thank
khair,
you very
brother,
much. We'll meet
for your
later.
effort. Thank you very much.
Bye
Jazakallah
bye.
khair. Assalamu alaikum.